Hello everybody and welcome to the video. My name is Chris, and before we get started on today's topic, or the only topic, this was the first one I'm discussing on my channel, just a few quick things I want to get out of the way. One, I apologize in advance for the poor audio quality. I'm currently sitting here in the process of doing edits to my video, and I can already tell how sketchy and scratchy the audio is. I don't know how to fix it personally, and I don't have an on-hand editor right off the spot that can go ahead and edit this. I have a friend who might be able to do it, and I'll talk to her a little bit later, but in the meantime, please bear with. I might just switch this out with a better audio quality a little bit later. Second, I also do apologize for the lighting. It's kind of like bright on one side here and not so much on the other. I don't have a filming setup. This is not the kind of video I normally make in terms of content for either YouTube or anything else. So I don't have a setup to really appropriately record this kind of content. Please bear with me, and I do apologize for that. So with those two things out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. That would probably be the biggest question I can see it being in anyone's mind right now. If it was even mine for the past 3 days, as I've contemplated, or 2 days, sorry, not 3, 2 days, as I've been wondering if this would even be worth it on my end to even do, but I kind of feel like if I don't, nobody's going to. And the way I've seen people discuss the subject, no one has been. You know, quite frankly, I think YouTube is just as guilty as other media platforms, where a lot of the information that cycles around is very restrictive and people only focus on what they can get attention out of, rather than the full scope of the picture. So it's not something I'm particularly fond of, and in the case of this topic, I mean, someone's got to say it, and since no one else is, I'm going to kind of stick my neck out here, and I'm going to talk about it. Alright, so one more quick thing to touch up on before we get into this video, and that is going to be credibility. I know in most cases people don't worry too much about this, but in my case I kind of feel like if I'm going to put my neck out here and say anything on the subject, I at least should provide some sort of background to you as to where it is and why it is I believe I've got any room to say anything at all. And I'll boil that down to just two simple reasons. One is logic. It kind of seems kind of harsh to even bring that up, but to an extent I kind of feel like I necessarily need to, because in terms of this entire topic and how it's been approached, it's the last thing I've seen anyone take into consideration is the logical surroundings of what's going on with the Rings of Power. And two is an understanding of copyright law and IP rights and the whole entire legal case around these sort of situations. Now that's something I don't expect to be common knowledge, and quite frankly, it's very obvious that it's not common knowledge. But the fact that no one's made an effort to even discuss or bring that up when they talk about the Rings of Power and they talk about what it's doing and all that other fun, that stuff, it's misleading. So, those are the two main points on my part where I feel like I know what I'm talking about. And as far as film goes, the primary reason I know anything in regards to any of this is because I am a writer myself. I've been world building for 18 years. I have been trying to pursuing an independent film career for the past 3, give or take, 4 years. If you want to have some idea as to what that looks like as far as my case goes, I'll make sure I include links to my content, if you will, in the description below. But beyond that, I just want to point out that I did have to research this for a good amount of time before I started pursuing my film career officially, because I needed to make sure I knew what it was I was getting myself into. But that's also a topic for another day. Meantime, we're just going to focus here on Rings of Power. So first, let's just start by getting the establishing where the situation currently stands. So if you're not quite sure what's going on, or you're new to this, or you've seen things but you're still quite figuring out what the whole fuss and fiasco is all about, I've boiled it down to 6 primary topics I see people talk about the most so far. If something else comes up, feel free to message me or leave it in a comment. I'll be happy to look into it. But in the meantime, these are the 6 primary ones that I have seen constantly being brought up and talked about or referenced. So, concern slash criticism number 1 would be the inclusion of diversity within the world that is not designed to be inclusive of diverse cultures away from what Tolkien originally intended. Long story short, for those not aware, when Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, he was writing a mythology for essentially Britain, to my understanding. Because of that, his writing isn't very culturally inclusive. It almost never references anything as far as any cultures or different appearances that would exist outside of Britain. That's where he grew up. That's where he wrote. He intended it to be a mythology for that region. It makes sense. So, when Amazon started showing off dark-skinned elves and dwarves and multiracial individuals that didn't quite fit that original picture, that's where that criticism is coming from. It's not the fact that they are including diversity, it's the fact that it just, lore-wise, it doesn't fit, and it's not present in the original context. Mostly. There's one point, if my memory serves me right, where I do believe Tolkien made a brief, and I mean very brief, reference in terms of hobbits at a potential, wow, my brain just flatlined on that one, sorry. He had referenced, I think it was a dark-skinned hobbits, but I'm not 1,000% sure, so if I'm wrong, or I'm thinking of the wrong thing, or if it was just a loose leaf note I may have seen in the past and just completely forgot it wasn't actually part of the Silmarillion or something else, do correct me. But I believe there was at least one reference to that point. Number 2 is changes to characters. Or, sorry, we'll get to that one here in a minute, but characteristic changes to elves and other races that were previously established in other material but not being represented in the same way in the Rings of Power. The most common, if not only, comparison I've seen anyone make is to the Peter Jackson trilogy. There is a very, very distinct difference as far as physical characteristics in the different races and cultures go between the Lord of the Rings trilogy, made by Peter Jackson, versus the Rings of Power, based on what we've seen so far in the 1-minute teaser of the TV show. 3, changes to characters. Now, I do apologize if you guys see me glancing off the sides. I do have a little bit of a note list of things I wanted to touch on here, so I'm probably just reading. But another one of the big ones I see, and this is probably one of the bigger ones I see, are changes to characters such as Elrond or Galadriel that don't fit with the original idea presented from, say, the Silmarillion. I feel like I've pronounced that wrong 2 or 3 times already in this video. I may continue to pronounce it wrong, and I do apologize to anyone who may or may not take offense to that. Feel free to correct me on the pronunciation in the comments. I will try not to butcher it, but that word always is a tongue twister for me all the time. Currently, the biggest one is Galadriel's character, where
from Lord of the Rings, we get a presentation of a very wise, powerful elf who isn't very aggressive, per se. And this show has described Galadriel as being not just younger, but also more brash and aggressive, more so than being wise, which is very different to her elder self that we see in The Lord of the Rings. There's also some changes to Elrond's character. I believe they described him originally as being a young, ambitious elf, and ambition is not exactly a word or phrase I would hear anyone use in relations to his character at any point in time, to my knowledge. That's something that I've seen a lot of people mention. It seemed kind of weird for him to be described as being ambitious when it certainly wasn't something that was. It wasn't really a part of his character to begin with from, Tolkien's original works. And those are the two main big ones. There are probably a couple others I might not have mentioned, but those are the two main big ones I see people talking about a lot. Fourth point is the condensed storyline. It's not nearly as talked about as some of these other things. It's more of just like kind of a nod off where people mention, oh yeah, we're not quite sure that's going to work out. And I can understand that, especially even from a TV perspective. I can understand the concern of a condensed storyline on what would otherwise be thousands of years. But I think this entire topic is sketchy from the start, and not because it's a problem, but just in general, it was a risk, and it wasn't really a risk in terms of being a problem in terms of the continuity or the lore. It was more the fact that, as far as filming goes, it's risky, and could potentially be self-destructive. But we'll get onto that one a little bit more when we start breaking this down, and I go a little bit more over it into my thoughts. This one's a bit more new. For the fifth point, it's not originally, like yesterday and the day the teaser dropped, I really didn't see this talked about too much. This has more or less come up within like the last 24 hours. And that is the criticism towards Patrick McKay and J.D. Pine? I feel like I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Anyway, J.J. Abrams spoke on behalf of these two, as far as being chosen as the showrunners and writers for The Rings of Power. And the freak out is the fact it's J.J. Abrams. Now, for those who don't watch or didn't follow the shenanigans that followed the sequel trilogy for Star Wars, here's a simple rundown. J.J. Abrams was the director for The Force Awakens. The director, he was swapped out for some other guy whose name I really don't care to even try to remember for the second one. And I think he came back for the third and final one. Personally, I don't think he deserves nearly as much hate as people put on him. I know, if I remember correctly, he did direct the... what was the name of the last film? The Last Skywalker? The Rise of Skywalker? The Rise of Skywalker. Sorry, there. But the criticism here is the fact that since J.J. Abrams was involved in any of this to begin with, that these two people are risky takes or can't be trusted with the Rings of Power. The last point I will mention that I've seen a lot of people talk about is the inclusions of hobbits. So point number 2. Amazon has directly stated that this show is not tied to, in any way, shape, or form, to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. So for everyone complaining about the fact that the characteristics don't match up, and the aesthetic doesn't match up, and it doesn't look anything close to what Peter Jackson created, hate to break it to you guys, and Amazon was fairly open about this. They directly had it stated in an article that was posted by, who were they again? I kind of just slightly forgot. I think I wrote it down. Vanity Fair, something like that. Anyway, you can go look it up. There's an article on there. I think it's called Amazon's Lord of the Rings show rises, the Rings of Power, something like that. Something along that line in the title. But the article is basically a response to the Backlash. And while I think it was a good step in the right direction, they should have elaborated just a little bit more. But we'll get into that in a minute. Point being, they did mention in this article that this show was not related to or associated with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's a reason why, and I'm about to touch that in a minute. So for everyone complaining about the fact it doesn't look or have any aesthetic similar to the Lord of the Rings, sorry guys, I hate to break it to you, but they're not connected. And there's a reason why they're not connected, okay? So that's the second point. Third point. And this is where we're going to start talking about the legalities. The thing that no one seems to want to bring up or address, even though they should be talking about this. And this is the thing that's been ticking me off and why I decided to make this video to begin with. I'm going to say this 3 times. Amazon only has rights to the appendices. Okay? Amazon only has rights to the appendices. Just the appendices. Nothing else. So you might be thinking, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to go down. The appendices is 150 pages, give or take, at the end of The Lord of the Rings. At the end of the book. It is essentially a hyper-condensed variation of the Silmarillion. It's a history overview of Middle-earth. It doesn't get nearly as in-depth or as descriptive as the Silmarillion does on events and characters. It's just there as an overview and an oversight as to give you an idea of what I think it does touch on the first age, but primarily the majority of it is on the second age of Middle-earth. Now, in terms of legalities, or the legal face of this, this means that Amazon can't touch anything outside of the appendices or something that directly references the appendices. They cannot use material from the Silmarillion. They cannot use material from Jackson's Lord of the Rings. They cannot use material from the Hobbit trilogy or the books. They're not allowed to touch any of that. All of that is outside of their reach. Okay? They can't touch any of that. So if you think about that for a minute, if the appendices is just a broad general overview, and they're not allowed to work with anything outside of the appendices that's already been established and created by Tolkien, as they've directly stated in this article that I just referenced, Amazon has had to create, essentially, original content to fill the gaps. This is why they've been able to do what they have done. It is not because they're trying to push identity politics, or because they're trying to be woke, or some other, quite frankly, I hate to be rude, bullshit that everyone wants to throw at them. The reason why their show is so different from what Tolkien originally wrote is because they don't have the right, legally, to touch anything else Tolkien wrote. They don't. They're not allowed to touch it. They're not allowed to meddle with it. They're not allowed to pick at it. They can't pull references. They can't pull concepts. They can't use the same character dynamics. Nada. They're not allowed to touch any of that. They have to create it all on their own and put together a show just based on the appendices alone. That is their agreement and deal with Tolkien Estates. That's what they have been given permission to work with. So, all of these arguments about Amazon being destructive, rude, harsh, or mistreating Tolkien's work, or violating Tolkien's original creation, guys, none of that has merit at all. In any way, shape, or form. You are creating a conflict and an argument where one simply doesn't need to exist and doesn't exist to begin with. And not a single person has put any effort into actually looking into that and ensuring that this information was made public knowledge. Amazon made it public knowledge. They stated it in this article that they've had to create original content, for one, and two, they've even gone so far as to have to create a whole entire team dedicated to creating this original content. Because they don't have the flexibility everyone is assuming they have. Okay, their rights and what they have to work with is extremely limited. And none of you know about that. The way people have talked about it, the way people are discussing it, the harsh backlash that everyone has had is a clear indicator that none of you have put any shred of research into this, or the people you are following and the people you are watching have not put any effort into making sure you were aware of this to begin with. Now, to my understanding, I put about 3 or 4 hours into ensuring the fact that I wasn't wrong. I did everything I could to make sure there was no official comment or content on Amazon's part that suggests or clarifies that what I'm saying is incorrect. My knowledge on this, as I said before, and my credibility is the fact that I'm a writer myself, and when I started turning to film, I spent a good deal of time ensuring I knew what I was getting into in terms of IP rights and all that other stuff, because of what I'm walking into. I know I don't have to worry about it too much because as an independent filmmaker, I'm not selling anything off to somebody else. But I originally did stand there where I was considering selling it off to somebody, and I had to make sure I knew what I was walking into in the event that I even considered taking that approach. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that no one wants to talk about or wants to mention because it would deprive all the exposure Amazon's getting because of this backlash. Guys, oh my god. You can calm down. Basically what I'm telling you is that regardless of what Amazon does, Tolkien's original creation still is the official canon. Amazon is not replacing it by any standard at all. Okay? None of that is getting replaced. So that's my response on that front. I won't I'm not going to turn it into a long, repetitive speech, but that's what's going on there, and please understand that, because you guys are having heart attacks for no reason. Alright, so basically, in conclusion, we can relax. This isn't as bad as a lot of people are making this whole thing out to be. Okay? So let's calm down there. Now, I almost going to point out that should anyone find anything that disproves what I'm saying or contradicts what I'm saying, any way, shape, or form, that is officially posted and supported by Amazon, please let me know. Give me links, pictures, screenshots, whatever. Just let me know. Get me where that source information comes in and let me look into that. Because if I am wrong, I have no issues getting back on here, making another video and correcting myself and apologizing for it. But based on what I've seen from Amazon, based on everything I have seen them talk about and the few articles I have read, I am fairly confident
that what I'm saying is pretty much spot on fact here, and we don't have to freak out or worry that Amazon's trying to completely redo Tolkien's entire universe and make it their own thing or make it better, because no. Even logically, that just has no sense whatsoever, even from a company standpoint. Now, I will also note in this conclusion, because there's a YouTube channel brought this up and mentioned it. I don't particularly care how they mentioned it or how they presented it, but they did bring it up, and it's worth noting. And I don't mind calling them out by name, but guys, like, don't hate on them, please. I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying. Midnight's Edge posted a video about the Rings of Power and about that in their title they suggest that that they're going to double down in remake trilogy, which at first I wasn't sure what they meant by that until I watched it. But basically, to boil it down, and I've looked it up, it is official. The rights for the Lord of the Rings films, the Hobbit films, and the exclusive gaming rights are all up for sale. And it is entirely, completely possible that Amazon will take that bid and buy all 3 of those spots. Now, the gaming one just makes sense. They were working on a game for a while before that got shut down because of issues. I'm loosely informed on that one. Sorry, there was an itch in my ear. And so it would make sense to me if they still wanted to go that direction, that they'd take those rights. But I also want to clarify that if they do buy the rights to all 3 of these items, Midnight's Edge, seriously, logic dictates here. They're not going to remake the whole trilogy. They're not going to remake Peter Jackson's films and try to say they can do it better. They're not going to, if they remake anything, maybe it would be The Hobbit, because of some of the problems that, I like The Hobbit, but I can also accept the fact that it has its own faults, more so than the original trilogy made by Peter Jackson. But if they were to remake anything, I would figure that would probably be the one they might remake. But there is no way they would have the nerve or the stupidity or the audacity to remake Peter Jackson's original trilogy and try to replace his work. There's, from a business standpoint, from a logical standpoint, there is no common sense into even considering taking that approach. So please don't freak out over that. The way Midnight's Edge posted that content and presented it, it's very suggestive that Amazon's going to try and take over, the Lord of the Rings universe and completely remake it to their own will. You guys need to seriously be more careful about how you present information. You really do, and it's not just Midnight's Edge. I have seen over 15 videos covering the Rings of Power, and everyone is just ignoring the legal sides of where Amazon's contract stands and where everything is currently set on terms of that front, and quite frankly, the logical side of everything. And I don't think it's right, which is why I'm here making this video. I highly doubt it's going to get that much attention. If it does, great. More people can realize they can calm down and don't have to freak out so much. But if it doesn't, then, I've wasted a day and a half putting in effort making this video. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, in conclusion, like I said, if you guys find anything that contradicts what I have said or contradicts what I have presented, please reach out to me with proof and links of the information that does so. I will look into it, I'll put together a response, and if need be, I will apologize on my part for being incorrect and misinformed. I don't have an issue owning up to that. I couldn't sit silent on this and watch so many people jump so quickly to hate on Amazon for something that, quite frankly, I don't think they deserve, and to be honest, under the circumstances, it's basically glorified fan fiction, and I can't complain about that either, because I would love to see more Tolkien-based works brought to cinema. I would love to see it more often. And who knows, maybe Amazon will eventually get the rights to expand into the official canon and actually create content based on the more expansive works that Tolkien's already made. Maybe not, we'll see. It just depends on what Tolkien Estates is willing to allow them to produce content for. And that's for them to say. So, you guys have a great day. Feel free to comment in the comments below. I'll respond as often as I can to who I can. I will note right now, and I know this probably will be skipped over and people will still do it anyway, if you're going to jump into my comments and essentially be an ass and completely disregard all social formality whatsoever, as far as just being respectful up front, I'm not going to reply to you, and if it's bad enough, I'm going to delete you, okay? If you want to talk, we can talk. If you want to discuss, we can discuss. But if you're going to come here to pick a fight, I'm not going to pick a fight with you. You're not worth the time and energy for that. So please, just keep that in mind, please, when you're making your comments. See you guys.